Hi guys, and in today's video for PSO2 NGS, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks for the Salon. Hi everyone, and in today's video for PSO2 NGS, I'm just going to go through some tips and tricks for the Salon. Some of these are things that you might know already, but some of them are not as obvious and might help you out a lot if you're spending a lot of time in the Salon adjusting your character, or if you're making a new character. So I'm going to go through a few different things in this video. As I say, some of them might be more common knowledge, but others might be a bit more obscure. So the first thing we'll look at is just some of the basic controls in the Salon that some people might overlook when they're starting out with the game. So the first obvious one is the camera. So it's fairly obvious that the analog sticks move your character around in the Salon. So your right analog stick moves the camera around like this, and the left stick moves it in like a pan instead. And moving it left and right also spins your character around as well. So that's fairly obvious. You can also zoom the camera in to certain degrees, so there are certain zoom levels. You do this on pad by pressing the X button if you're using the Xbox notation. So all the notation I'll use in this will be for the Xbox controller. So the X button, when you press that, it will zoom in one stage, then it will zoom in again, and you can continue adjusting the camera as well like this. And you can also zoom in a third stage as well. This is quite useful, obviously, for if you are focusing on the face of your character or some very small details that you need to focus on. So it's quite good for that. And then you just press it again and it'll zoom back out to the basic level. So they're very, very simple, and I imagine a lot of people already know about those already. Next thing is, at the bottom right of the screen down here, there are a few little icons, and these are actually a few little extra features that some people may miss. Again, I would imagine a lot of people who use the Salon a lot will know this already. But these are quite good for basically removing things on your character so that you can get a better look at things when you're adjusting them. The first one is, if you press, it says L1 on here because I'm using my PlayStation notation in the game, but on an Xbox controller, if you press left bumper, what it'll do is it will actually remove your character's hairstyle. So you can see there, so it makes your character completely bald. Now this doesn't make them bald in game, there is actually a hairstyle for that instead. What this is for is, if I go to my character's face, what you can see is, if I bring her hair back on, it covers quite a lot of things. So if I was adjusting her ears, for example, or if I was adjusting her left eye, it's quite obscured by the hair at the minute. So by removing the hair, it just gets the hair out the way so that you can focus on the eyes or whatever it is you need to focus on. It just makes it a lot easier to work with the face while you're adjusting it. So that's the first thing. You just press L1 again or left bumper to put the hair back on. Next up, if you press right bumper or R1, what this will do is it will remove the clothes in layers. So as you probably know, in NGS, most clothing comes in layers. So you have an inner layer, a base layer, and an outer layer. So what I'll do, just to show this better, so if I just put on any outer at the moment, so let's just say I've got this outer on. So I've got an outer jacket, the dress base, and then an inner as well. So if I press R1 the first time, it'll remove the outer. This is good for if the outer is quite bulky in particular and you're needing to see something on your character. Removing the outer can be a good way of getting the fine adjustments that you want without the outerwear being in the way. If you press the R1 button again, it'll remove the base layer. This is so that you can see your character's innerwear. I suppose the main use for this is, I suppose, if you're adjusting anything like body paint or things like tattoos, it lets you see where they're placed on the character a bit easier. And then if you press R1 again, what it does, and I really don't see the point in this basically puts you in the starter innerwear that you never see. So this, you only ever see it when you actually make the character. When you press R1 again, and it puts all the layers back on again. So that's fairly useful just for removing things and getting them out the way, just so that they're not interfering with your view when you're trying to adjust something. So the next thing I want to cover, it also relates to these icons in the bottom right. NGS's character creator also has a built-in undo and redo. So by default, it's bound to, the undo is bound to select on PlayStation or back on Xbox, and the redo is bound to start or option on PlayStation and the start button on Xbox. So let's say for example, I change my hairstyle, and then later on I decide, after looking at this for a bit, I think, no, actually I prefer the previous one, but I can't remember what the hairstyle was called. All I do is I hit select, or the back button, and it'll jump back to the hairstyle I had. Obviously, if you've made another change since, it will do whatever the last change that you did was. If I then decide, actually, no, I quite like the hairstyle I changed to, then what I would do is just press the start button or option, and it'll jump back again. So you have that quick undo redo, which is really, really useful, particularly if you're making small changes. It's also really useful for if you're messing around with the face and you mess something up on the face and want to go back to what you had. So that's another little thing. Again, I think most people will be aware of these changes. So this is another really, really quick one, but a lot of options in the NGS Creator have sync options. So we have sync options for the hair. We have sync options for the eyes and the iris colors. What this is really good for is if you've got a multicolored hair and you decide, no, actually, I just want all the hair to be one color, or you've got two different colored eyes and you want to make them all the same color, you can just sync them. It means that you don't have to manually match the colors up. So I'll show you this quickly. So if you look at my character at the moment, it might be quite hard to see. So again, because it's hard to see, we can press L1 to get rid of the hair. You might be able to tell, but her eyes are slightly different colors. She has a kind of white eye and then one sort of lilac colored eye. If I later decide that I want both those the same color, all I can do is I can just go sync left and right iris colors. And it'll sync them automatically. Now the downside is that when you unsync it, it doesn't go back to what you had. So what you would have to do is you would have to keep undoing. Because you can keep using the undo repeatedly as well, and eventually you'll get back to where you were. So this also applies to hair colors as well. So here we've got a hair with two different colors on it. And I decide that I actually want to make this all one color instead. So what you do is you just go and sync hair colors 1 and 2, and it'll automatically sync the second color to the first. Now, unfortunately, if you preferred the second color, you would have to just do it manually because the sync option defaults to your first color. So in this instance, the blue was the second color and the like lilac purple was the first color. So when I sync it, it defaults to the lilac. The next up is layering for body paints. So as you may know, you can have up to 2 different body paints on your character. Body paints can cover things like thigh highs and can cover things like tights as well. For some reason, they're all treated as body paints. Now, NGS features a system where you can actually layer them. So you can see at the moment, we've got the these Gensho tights, which is the kind of fishnets that are all over a body. And we've also got the dusk thigh highs, which you might be able to just about see underneath these. So at the moment, the way it's sitting is that the Gensho tights are sitting over the dusk tights. If you go into this change body paint layers, you can actually adjust how the body paint sits in relation to your innerwear and with each other. So if you've got innerwear that's quite large on your character in terms of, for example, if it's something like leggings, you can adjust it so that the body paint sits over that or under that. In this case, all I want to do is I want to switch these 2 body paints around. So I want the tights to be under the thigh highs. And the way you do that is you basically adjust the priority. So whatever's the first priority will be the top layer. So in this case, I want these 2 body paints switching around. So if I switch this to body paint 2, you can see it automatically switches this third one to body paint 1. And now you can see that the tights actually go, they seem to stop where her thigh highs start. And it's because the tights are actually going under the thigh highs now. So that's a really good way of layering different body paints, and you can make some cool effects with it as well. So next up is one for the casts. So this character isn't a cast. I don't have any cast parts on her at the moment, so I can't really show you this. But in the cast parts setting, there is an option for obviously different part colors. At the bottom, there's a section called color sync settings. If you go into this, what you can actually do is you can select each of your individual parts. So you can see here we've got a section for head parts, body parts, arm parts, and leg parts. And each of these has separate color palettes. So you can set it up so that, for example, your head could be a totally different color to your body, which could be a totally different color to your arms and a different color to your legs. And you can set all of this as a setting so that when you change parts, it will remember those settings across the parts. This is a really, really useful way of maintaining your color scheme across different part sets. Next little tip is don't forget about your ornament display settings. So a lot of different parts in NGS have various different ornaments that can be adjusted. And this applies to things like base wears, outer wears, inner wears. It also applies to some hairstyles and different face options as well as cast parts. So just have a toggle around with these because you can, some outfits in particular, you can adjust quite a lot just by removing some of the ornaments. So, for example, if you look at my base wear at the minute I'm hiding one ornament and I'm not hiding the other. So if I don't hide the ornaments at the minute, you might not be able to see the difference, but if I go up here, these tassels are actually ornaments, these golden tassels here. So if I think it's base wear 2, I can remove those tassels. So if I don't want those on, I can just remove them. They're just toggleable. The other option is for the little pieces on the wrists. So you can see I can remove those as well. On this outfit, it's not massive difference as it is quite small, but there are some outfits that change quite significantly based on the different ornaments. So have a toggle around with those, because you might find that even if you don't like the look of an outfit, you might like it once you've adjusted some of the toggles. You can also preview this as well when you're looking at an outfit in a player shop. There is actually an option to actually preview the different options for it. You can also choose to hide or display characters' innerwear. So if I untick this, you can see now that you can see like a top there a little bit, and you can see like the strap on a pants there. But if I hide that, it disappears. There are some outfits in the game that will automatically hide your innerwear, so things like the bikinis or anything like that, they tend to automatically hide your innerwear. You can't really adjust them otherwise. But a lot of other outfits, you can have the toggle to decide whether you want it visible or not. So next up, let's talk about some accessories. So accessories are an absolute rabbit hole. So first of all, thing you know is you need to abide by the cost value. So every character can have up to 18 points of accessories, and each accessory costs a different amount of points, which is listed in this little diamond here. So you can see the leg pull-ons, which are these sort of bell bottoms that I've got here, they cost 3 points. So if I remove those, I would gain 3 points of accessories. Now, for accessories, you also have the advanced settings tab. And this is an absolute goldmine for adjusting things. So if I go into the advanced settings for these leg pull-ons, what you can see is we have an attach point. Now, it's grayed out on this one because for these, you can only attach them here. But there are some accessories that you can attach to certain parts of your character. So, for example, you might have a thruster, for example, that may be able to attach to your back or your legs or your arms. And you'll have different attach points that you can anchor it to. And then you can adjust it from that anchor point. Next up, you've got color settings. So, again, some people may not be aware of this, but you can color all of your accessories. On some accessories, it'll be a lot more noticeable than others. So, for example, for these pull-ons here, if I go on color 1 settings, I get little swatches, and I can basically color it to any other color that I've already used. Now, I do have a little bit of a gripe with this. I do feel that we should just have a swatch that you could just choose a custom color for. I don't see why we're limited to this, but you do have to choose a color that you've already used for some reason. So let's say I want these to be bright red. We have on a cast parts color here, which we're not using at the moment, but we do have a red color here. So if I select that, it will change the color of them. And then if we go into color 2 settings, some accessories will actually have 2 colors that you can choose. So then I want the subcolor to be white. So we'll choose this white here. And you can see it totally changes the look of the accessory. So definitely have a play around with your advanced settings. There is also a lot of adjustments you can make here. So you can adjust the location of the item, the rotation of it, and the sizes. And just like I mentioned earlier, you can also sync these as well. This is so, for example, if I wanted to just adjust the width of these, I can just adjust the x-axis. Another little tip for this is if you hold the A button or the X button if you're on PlayStation, you hold that and then press the directions, it'll move in much larger increments. So you can see we can have them really, really thin, all the way up to incredibly wide. But you can see it hasn't adjusted the other dimensions. However, if we go on sync sizes and then adjust it, it'll move all 3. So this is absolutely fantastic for basically syncing and resizing accessories so that it fit your character. Because unfortunately, accessories they don't work on every single character. So this gives you a way of adjusting the sizes to hopefully make them fit your character a bit better. So the next one relates to character voices. So in NGS, we have 2 different systems for voices. So we have NGS spec voices and PSO2 spec voices. So PSO2 spec voices work absolutely fine. The difference between those and NGS spec voices, though, is that NGS spec voices actually have a couple of extra options. So the main one is that all voices you can adjust the pitch on. So, for example, if we choose, let's say, Manon's voice, you can adjust the pitch here so you can have it as deep as you want to. Or you can have it incredibly high-pitched. or somewhere in the middle. Now, with NGS spec voices, you also have this slider here called voice effects. What this does is it applies what I can only describe as a synthetic or robotic effect to the voice. This is really, really good for if you're making a cast character, because it lets you have a kind of synthetic, fake sounding voice on the character, which it's actually a really cool effect. So if we stick with Manin's voice, I play it normally. Then if I add the effect, if I add it halfway first, you might be able to tell she's got sort of a weird sort of raspy echo to the voice. And just to accentuate it a bit more, let's put it on maximum. So you can tell it kind of puts a synthetic effect on your voice. So if you are making something like a cast character, this might be an option you want to look at. So this is one reason typically to choose NGS spec voices over PSO2 spec. However, I do realize that there are a lot more PSO2 spec voices in the game. So your choice is a lot more limited for NGS spec, unfortunately. But this is just a nice little option that you've got for the NGS spec voices. So sticking with the sync options that we mentioned earlier, there is also this body shape auto sync settings option. What this does is there are two options you can select. The first one allows you to sync your PSO2 NGS and PSO2 spec bodies, because in NGS you can still use a PSO2 spec body style. If you choose this option, it will try and sync both of the bodies, so any changes you make to the NGS body will also be applied to the PSO2 spec body as well. However, you can choose to separate the two if you want to as well. Similarly, you can also do it between humanoid and cast bodies as well. So if you want your, for example, you might want a character that, for example, looks like a girl when she's humanoid, but you might also want a big bulky cast as well. You can do that with this by effectively unsyncing the body types. So if you unsync them, you can adjust the cast body type separately. So you can have a completely different cast body to whatever your humanoid body is. So next thing is, one of the coolest things in the character creator and in NGS in general is that we actually have cell shading in the game. Now the cell shading applies to your character when you turn it on in the Salon. You can adjust it separately for other people's characters. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to the actual world itself, it is just for characters at the moment. But in the Salon, you can adjust the cell shading settings for your character. So you can turn it on and off. So we've got it turned off here. But if I turn it on, you can see it is quite a drastic difference. It is a very noticeable cell shading effect. Actually looks pretty cool, I think. When it is turned on, there is a few adjustments that you can make to it. So you can adjust how emphasized the outline is. So you can have it to be, for example, a very, very subtle cell shading like this. Or you can have it really, really exaggerated. Or somewhere in the middle. Next up, you can also adjust the shadow density. So if we adjust this, you can see that the way the shadow is cast on the character works differently. Now these settings only apply while you're in cell shading, obviously. So the final thing I'm going to go through today is about creation data management. So there is a little subtlety you can do with this. So what you need to do, first of all, is you need to navigate to your root folder for PSO2 NGS. So let's show you that now. So when you navigate to your root NGS folder, so for me, it's in Documents SEGA Phantasy Star Online-2 _NA _Steam. This will obviously depend on what version of the game you're playing, but for me, because I play Steam, that's where the root game install is. When you get into your folder, anytime you save a creation data management file, it will save into here. So for example, this one here is Uriko _2024. So Uriko is one of my characters. This is a creation file that we've made for her. What you want to be looking at with these is at the end, there is a file extension. So for this one, it says .fhp. Then if we go to another one, so Taker, which is the character we've been looking at, who's a female Newman, this ends in .fnp. And then Neath, who is a cast, has .fcp. So you might see the pattern here. So basically, this suffix at the end denotes what race and gender your file is for. So Neath being a female cast, FCP means female cast. This one for Shiori is FHP, she's female human. Taker is a Newman, so she's FNP. And I believe for male characters, it would be, for example, MHP or MCP, and so on. Now, the way you can get around it is, if you have a file that you want to use and it's for a different race, what you can do is you literally just change the file extension. So at the moment, if we just hop back into NGS, so you can see that once we go into the creation data management here, if we go to load creation data, what it does is it automatically loads the race and gender that your character is. So because Taker is a female Newman, it automatically loads the Newman type 2 files. Now, let's say I want to use that file for Uriko, who is a female human. Yes, I can just go through here and I can just scroll to the human type 2s and find it here. But sometimes it's handy to have all the different files in a single list, because what you can do is you can highlight them and just select them. So I could choose this, for example. I can choose this, for example, and it will load different base files. So it can be quite handy sometimes just to have all of your creation files in the same list, just so you can categorize them a bit easier and so that you can quickly scan through them to see which one you want to use. And the way you can do that is to change that suffix on the end of the file name. So if we now change that Uriko file from a FHP to a FNP file, it'll actually appear in this list. So what I've done now is I've changed the FHP file to a FNP file. If we now go back into load creation data, you can see it now actually appears in the Newman type 2 list, where even though it's a human file, and if I load it, it will load my human character. So this is just a useful way of just having all of your files that you want to use often on the same list, just so you can quickly scan between them. So I can quickly just bounce between these different character types. I'll go back to what I was using. It's a really, really interesting way of just having them all on the same list, just so you don't have to just scan through all the different lists here. It just makes things a little bit quicker for me, in my opinion. Some people might be fine just going through the menus, but for me, I like to have them all generally in the same list if I'm going through a few different files, just so I can cross-reference them a bit quicker. So I hope it's been a relatively useful video. I just wanted to highlight a few things that I use in the character creation and in the Salon, just that make my life a little bit easier when I'm in there. And if it makes my life easier, maybe it'll make some of your lives a bit easier as well. If you've got any suggestions or any other tips or anything, please leave them below in the comments. I'm always looking for more tips with the creator as well, because anything I can do to make this easier is much appreciated. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, or joining as a member. I do 2 videos a week, and I normally do a stream on Sundays as well, where we normally play one of the Phantasy Star games. Lately, we've been playing a lot of PSO. You can also follow me on X at Section Skyline, and I also do have a Discord that you can join as well, which I'll try and leave a link in the description for that as well. But for the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.